Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah. See, if you believe in the God in you, it's a better place. Creating the force and the power to live a better life. Know that love and joy and peace is one in all of the same space. That you were chosen just like God. Your energy. That's right. Only you can make the change. Shake your head at you. Shine so bright from darkness to light. From darkness to light. Yeah. And you'll find your way out. Oh, it won't seem way out. The power of God will flow through you from way out.
Welcome. This is my Alchemizing Energy, and today we're back again with Baba Falokun, and we're going to be discussing how to mark a bow in IFA divination. So, in past live streams, we have discussed what is an ebo. We've discussed like that a bow is not necessarily always a blood offering. We've talked about the different types of divination, whether they be with the cow's head. We have the 10 types of divination. We talked about each one, the cowrie shell. We've talked about sacrifice versus a bow. We've talked about how we eat the animal versus, we talked about a different plethora of things. We also talked about what is divination, what is IFA. We went into the plasma science, we went into metaphysics. We have gone the gamut. This has been a very great series, and we want to thank Baba Falokun for bringing us the information that he's brought. So today he wanted to get into how a bow is marked in a divination, and exactly how that works. Because whenever you get a divination, there's usually some kind of sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just a behavior modification. Sometimes there are more different things that might have to be done. And how do you find out what that particular behavior modification may be, whether it's a sacrifice of an animal through blood, whether it's taking some fruit down to the river, whether it's just changing your behavior, just instead of walking this a circle every time, walking a square. How is that determined? And that is what we're going to be talking about today. Welcome to the channel, Baba. Boshishe.
Agboato, a blessing of long life, a Kabul. Welcome. Aduple Ori Egun. We thank the ancestors for the wisdom. I'd also like to say, Ire Lona Alafia Waye, may there be peace on earth immediately. So, to get into today's topic, I want to review a little bit. There's a lot of what I would call non-traditional ideas associated with this topic. Non-traditional ideas are not necessarily wrong, but they're different, and it's not what I do. I've tried very hard to study the traditional approach to IFA, and a big part of my study has been involved translating and understanding liturgical Yoruba, the Yoruba used in our oral scripture. Some of that oral scripture has been written down, and I would argue poorly translated, and that poor translations is causing some confusion. So let's start here. Most of what we've talked about up until now has been philosophical, theological, and metaphysical. Today we're going to take a deeper dive into the how-to, but the how-to only makes sense in the context of the why, okay? So to review, divination is not fortune-telling, it's problem-solving. Now, there are elders in our community who are what I would call very psychic. You can have glimpses of the future through connection to ancestor spirits. Sometimes Orisha will give us access to glimpses into the future, and that's not a bad thing. It's just not the focus of divination. Divination is related to the issue of problem solving. Problem solving is related to the issue of expanding consciousness based on the teachings of the Prophet Arunlila. Expanding consciousness is always rooted in good character. In other words, divination gives us a glimpse into our destiny. Sometimes we do divination where the entire focus is in our destiny. When we do divination about destiny, it's not, some people think that divination then gives us the whole roadmap for the rest of our life. And that's not necessarily true either. We can ask about our destiny and we get some general guidelines, but we still live on a free will planet. The tradition is a free will tradition. You can choose not to embrace your destiny, and that's going to affect future divination. In other words, if your divination related to your destiny says you need to improve your relationship with your mother and you make no effort to do that, the next time you get divination, it's going to say the same thing. So if you do make an effort and the relationship improves, then the next time you do divination, you're going to take what I would call a deeper dive into the specifics of your future and your destiny. All right. So a lot of times when we come to divination, we're carrying confusion with us. We're not sure what to do. Should I go to school, get an education for a better job, or should I focus on what I'm doing now and hope that I'll get a better job by virtue of what a good job I do and so on and like that. So if we're not certain, the divination can say, does it bring us good fortune to follow this path, or does it bring us good fortune to follow that path? In a sense, that's fortune telling, but in the strict sense, it's not, because you still have a choice of whether or not to follow those guidelines. So, in my experience, when a person comes to you with confusion and the divination process clears up the confusion, that is usually sufficient for a change, sufficient for an improvement in the quality of life. And there is an abode done, an offering, but it's usually very, very simple. It's not generally known, but every traditional Odu from Yoruba culture has within it a Oriki. An Oriki is an invocation. In the case of Odus, the invocation is for good fortune from the particular verse, and it's a invocation is designed to put the diviner in an altered state to access the resonance that gives the client a sense of the feeling that occurs when confusion resolves into clarity around specific issues. So let's say this about Odu. Some of the a lot of Odu is a reference to a verse of our scripture. Our scripture is called Dafa. Dafa from Milesian Da Ifa means to open Ifa. So Dafa means to look at one verse in the overall scripture. There's 250 verses. Each verse has segments. Each of those Odu would be more accurately called a chapter, and each chapter has verses or subchapters. So we have a lot of material to deal with in Dafa. We're asking for the particular reference that's most helpful for clearing up the confusion that is being brought to us by our client that day. All right. So let me address one area of confusion. 1946 in Cuba, there was a gentleman who rewrote most of the Odus based on his belief that they were too optimistic and that he stated openly that he wanted to put more fear and loathing into the verses so that people would not hesitate to pay him for his services. I find that not consistent with our faith, but it's caused a lot of confusion. So one of the ways that we can tell if we're dealing with a traditional verse or not is traditional verse has a specific format. Not all, but most of the verses that come out of traditional Yoruba culture start with the name of the diviner and the name of the client. Now, for some reason, that part of the verse is rarely translated, but in fact, they're probably the most important element of the verse. The name of the diviner is the solution to the problem. It's not actually a person's name. The name of the client is the problem. It's not actually a person's name. So if you're not sure what the Oriki Ire is for the particular verse, you repeat the name of the diviner 3 times. Now, I know it would be better if you understood what you were saying. That's the situation we find ourselves in. It's one of the reasons why it's helpful to have some understanding of the Yoruba language. But also the verse itself will then go to a description of the action taken by the client. And the part of that description that sounds like a blessing is a blessing. Also, sometimes in the verse, you'll see the phrase, they sang, quote, and then there's 2 or 3 sentences in the quotation marks. That's actually a communal song, and that is also a form of Oriki Ire. As you hear people chanting Yoruba verses that speak the language, when they come to that part of the verse, the whole community joins in singing. It's really a remarkable and elevating and wonderful experience. But so now,
here's the question: when you say Oriki Ire, for people that don't know what Oriki Ire means.
Yes, Oriki, the word Oriki is from the region Ori, Kiki, meaning praising the consciousness. It's the Yoruba word for invocation. So you can invoke good fortune. That's our job as diviners, Oriki Ire, invoke good fortune. Sorry, I presume something sometimes. Yes, so Ire is good fortune. Oriki is invoking good fortune. And in fact, I might get into it a little later. Sometimes when the future doesn't look so good, the diviner will go ahead and invoke good fortune anyway. That's part of our training. That's part of our job. That's part of our destiny, really. And some people are offended by that, but I think there's a lot of value in looking at the positive possible outcome of a particular challenge, let's say. All right. So when you are dealing with a divination in which a decision needs to be made, and that decision is related to, let's call it confusion, you mark, if you throw the opoile is the divining chain, that'll give you a mark of Odu, a symbolic mark. I'm going to use an example for those that may not. Oh, there we go. That's a good. Okay, so that's the chain showing the first 16 Odus for the right leg, and the left leg is the same. So you can take your divination and you can mark the pattern on a wooden circular tray. There we go. Look at you. You're on it. And that tray has Irosun on it. Irosun is powder. It's actually termite dung from the sacred IFA tree, where the ikin, or the seeds we use for divination, come from. And so, okay. So the ikin are kept in that bowl to the left. That stick to the right is called an iroke. That's used for tapping against the tray. It's used as kind of a musical instrument to accompany the invocation. At the bottom of the stick, there's a circle that usually has a tapper in it, so it works as a musical instrument. But it's also very symbolic. The circular tray represents the Odu, or the womb of creation. The stick, the Iroke, represents a phallic symbol as a symbol of light, infusing the womb with a holographic imprint of creation that gives us a glimpse into the solution to a problem. All right. So when we're clearing up confusion, we mark the Odu on the tray. We find the Oriki Ire. We sing it. And then we do what's called close the Odu. Pretend this is the tray. We take our finger. We don't touch the tray with this finger. So we take the powder from the top to the center, from the bottom to the center, to the side to the center, and then we take a little pinch of it and we put it on the tongue of the client and rub it across their head. And that is called transferring Ashe, or transferring spiritual power to support the good fortune that came from the divination. And it is what we could call the simplest form of Ebo in the IFA toolkit of making offerings. All right. So that leads us to, let's say, people would come with.
Did you want me to kind of show what that, just for a person?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Hold on, let me show what this looks like, because
it's
so you can get a visual of what a person would see. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
So this is the tray right here.
Perfect.
You know, and it has the not the ofu. What is this? The stuff on it. No.
It's called Ierosu. That's termite.
Ierosu, right. And so I think he's going to kind of like do. Right. So that's what it looks like. So what is that he's pouring? Is that gin, or what is that he's pouring?
Yeah, gin is a common what's called Audimu offering to the Ikin. The Ikin are the sacred seeds from the tree of life. One of the fundamental foods in Yoruba culture is palm oil. So palm is made from a fig. The fig has a relatively large seed. Now, when you have palm trees, which are really abundant, let's say, in the Nigerian landscape, the trees where the seeds have 3 eyes, those are edible. When the seeds have 4 eyes, the fig is poisonous. So those trees are marked with a red cloth, and the 4-eyed seeds are then used for divination, and the meat from those seeds or from those figs is not eaten. This is Obi Abata, which is not the fig, a little different, but that's right. You don't see pictures of the figs very often, but the seeds, if you look up Ikin, you should get a picture of the seed that's inside the fig, and it's IKIN. Those seeds are then used for the divination process as well as the opoile.
Okay, here it is right here. So this is the Ikin right here.
There we go. If you take a little closer look at it, it's like a coconut. It's got little dots or eyes, I call them, on one end. And if the seeds are from an edible fig, they have 3 eyes. If they're from a poisonous fig, they have 4 eyes. 4, 5, and 6 eyes are all poisonous, all used for divination and not as food. And so those palm trees are usually marked with red cloth. The seeds fall to the ground, and the awos come by and collect them and use them for various religious reasons. Divination is but one of the many functions for Ikin. Ikin are actually consecrated and buried under sacred places as a way of holding Ashe in the land itself. All right. So he's pouring gin on the Ikin as an offering to the Ikin themselves. He's going to use those to do divination. So what is done is you put 16 Ikin in your hand, you slap your hand, you pick as many as you can. If you leave 2 in your hand, you do 1 mark on the tray. If you leave 2 in your hand, you leave 1 mark on the tray. I said that. 2 is 1, 1 is 2. So the idea of 1 and 2 lines is light becomes dark, dark becomes light. That's an expression of what Einstein called the conservation of matter. Nothing is destroyed, only transformed. So the process of determining the symbolism for an Odu is done through this method that he just did very quickly, very efficiently. So that
I noticed that after he got with, okay, so you marked four signs down, or it looks like he marked one, like he was able to mark. He marked 8 of them. So he marked 8.
Each of those line of marks is called the leg of IFA. Each leg of IFA has 4 marks. So there's 2 legs of IFA. Each leg of IFA refers to a essay Odu, meaning the foot of the Odu, or a verse within the chapter. If that makes sense.
It looks like once he's done with those 4 or 8, then he puts it can back in, rinses it back off with the water. I mean, with the gin.
Right.
He picks them back up, and then he continues to see what happens after he does that. Let's see.
Yeah, listen, there's different ways to do this, and that's not exactly what we're going to talk about today. So,
all right. So just so people can get an idea of how.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Because you don't get a visual. It's one thing to say it, another thing to say.
Yes, I agree. Talking about it alone makes it hard to visualize and gets confusing real quickly. So we have a basic pattern that refers to a verse and a set of metaphysical principles that are a guideline for the diviner to solve a particular problem. All right. So the first consideration, and this is where things get confusing, is the client either understands the advice or they don't. Now, IFAs don't ask what you already know. For me, if somebody doesn't understand the advice, it's really clear, because as soon as they hear the advice, they start making excuses and reasons why it either doesn't apply to them, or it's not possible, or they're not interested in a particular solution. All right. So in IFA, we call that EB, or resistance to expanding your consciousness. The word EB means umbilical cord. And so the symbolic reference of EB is holding on to something that's no longer needed. So when we were born, while we're in the womb as a fetus, the umbilical cord brings us life. And when we come into the world, the doctor removes the umbilical cord, or the midwife. And so it's the symbolism is of letting go of ideas or things or beliefs that no longer serve us. All right. To me, the easiest example of letting go of things that stand in our way are the various isms: racism, sexism, homophobia. If you talk to people that hold on to those ideas, they will assure you that racism, sexism, and homophobia are all expressions of God's will, and they need to express those things to kind of assert their understanding of what it means to be a person. So those are the kinds of issues that IFA deals with. So once you take it out of the fortune-telling realm, it's clear that IFA divination is problem-solving, rooted on the premise that life is made to work, and solving problems is rooted in the ability to expand consciousness, rooted in good character. You know, people are known to come to diviners to ask for offerings that'll protect their drugs shipments, keep them out of jail, protect their court cases against them for beating their wife, all kinds of horrible things. And IFA does not have that function. That's not what we do. If you use it for those purposes, my belief is that you won't be very effective, and you'll be creating some karma that down the road you may not want to deal with. So sometimes, when the client is in resistance or in EB, then you need to look for the ritual process that will transform that EB into E-ray, meaning will cause the client to let go of their resistance and understand the lesson from the verse and embrace that in a way that will bring them good fortune. That's the process. That's what we're talking about when we're making bows and we're making offerings. Now, I want to take a side note here. Many people in the diaspora have the belief, and it's a common one. I don't want to say it's wrong. I will say that it's not my belief. It's not what I was taught. It's not consistent with my training from my lineage in Ode-Remo, Ogun State, Africa. Some people will teach you that EB is because the Orishas are mad at you. That is clearly a Catholic Christian idea that has no basis in IFA. There is no place in any of the verses where the prophet of Rumula, who is the prophet of our faith, speaks about spirit being mad at you. That's just not part of what we believe and what we do. So to use the divination system to appease angry gods, that's like, it's not for that. So it makes no sense in my opinion. So what we do have is 4 distinct realms of ritual in which resistance is transformed. And each of those realms of transformation is accumulative, if that makes sense. So if a person is resistance, we will ask the oracle, does the transformation of resistance into clarity come with assistance from the ancestors? Does it come with the cleaning of the aura or the ori? Does it come with the cleaning with Orisha, or does it come with a ritual involving IFA? All right. So if what we do is we have what's called Igbo. Igbo can be various things. Most commonly, it's a knee bone from a goat, a piece of broken plate, a particular seed, and sometimes a stone. So we have a person separate 2 different elements of the Igbo, and one represents yes and no, and we throw the opele, and the senior Odu determines what hand to open, and that tells us where the resistance lies and what kind of ritual we need to do to elevate the person from resistance to clarity. Okay, now that's a little technical and complicated, but that's the system that's used. And again, it's not about appeasing angry gods, right? And okay, so let's just start with the first element of it. If you look at certain books, list all the elements for all 4 forms of E-ray in one segment, and it looks like, if you read it without understanding it, that you've got to make all those offerings for every kind of resistance, and that's simply not true. So the most common book that's used in the diaspora was a book written by a man named Falokun, and it's actually the system of divination used in the lineage that I was initiated in. And at the end of each verse, he usually starts with akara, which is food for the ancestors, then lists a pigeon, and then various birds, and then a goat or a sheep in that order. So here's what that means, to get technical now. And I'm speaking to people that are involved in divination. Otherwise, it may not completely make sense. I'll try and make it relevant to everybody. But if the spiritual force to transform resistance into clarity comes from the ancestors, the offering is typically what's called adimu. That's a food offering. Akara is a very common food offering because it's a common ancestral food. It's essentially a deep fried biscuit. It's made from yam flour, yam flour, deep fried. Very good, actually. And it's a common ancestral offering. When those are made and cooked up, they're put on the ancestor shrine. They're left there for a few hours, and then they're shared with the community. And so when we make ancestral offerings, we put the Odu that came during the divination on the tray directly in front of the ancestor shrine. And ancestor shrine is a place where in IFA we honor the memory of our ancestors. And then to the right of the tray and to the left of the tray, we put a white plate with cornmeal on it. And in the cornmeal, we mark the Odu Oyeku Meji, both to the right and the left. The Odu Oyeku Meji represents a portal into the realm of the ancestors. So the portal to the right allows us to enter the realm of the ancestors. The portal to the left allows us to come back to Earth. If we just have one portal, then we're stuck in the realm of the ancestors, which is known as being dead. So that's not a good idea. So we have two portals that we're working with. And so we'll read the Ariki Ire onto the tray. We'll close it. We'll anoint the head of the client. The client will also, before we do that, will pray in their own language for the transformation that they're seeking. And then we make the offering. We put some of the Iarosum from the tray onto the food. And so that prayer is literally ingested by the community who has come to share in the offering. And it becomes really a communal effort to elevate the confusion of a single person. Yes, okay, so, and this particular offering has significance that's unique to the belief of our faith, and that is this. IFA teaches that our first moral obligation is to draw a line in the sand, literally, and break the flow of what's called an ancestral curse. In other words, if there's a family history of addiction, alcoholism, if there's a family history of abuse, if there's a family history of sexual abuse, all those things have the potential to affect future generations. There's a saying in AA, hurt people hurt people. So if you've been abused as a child, there's a good chance you'll abuse your children. So part of the elevation of consciousness, part of the ability to move beyond our own resistance, part of the ability to expand our consciousness is to break the influence of negative family dynamics on our own understanding of who we are. And that's frequently much easier said than done. Usually when you grow up with a particular dysfunction, it's hard to imagine other options. So one of the functions of doing the ritual asking for good fortune for the ancestors is to include, if not the diviner invites somebody who is a good medium for the ancestors, so the ancestors can start to identify some of the sources of dysfunction, some of the solutions to dysfunction. Because what Western science doesn't generally understand, and which makes IFA, I believe, an extremely effective healing tool, is that in IFA we understand that ancestral memories are passed down through our DNA, literally, so that we can have memories that are not ours that then influence negative behavior. And we have the medicine, the tools, the keys, the ability really to clean away those memories that are not ours and really break the chain of their unconscious influence. So that's the first step. We call it Ire Egun, good fortune from the ancestors. If the oracle indicates that that's not going to be sufficient, then we go to the next phase of the ritual process, which is a head cleaning, sometimes an aura cleaning. So what's done with that is we mark the Odu that came for the divination on the top half of the tray, and on the bottom half of the tray, we mark 3 Odus. We mark Ofun Meji, Ofun Otura, and Ofun Ogbe and EJ Ogbe. That's the 3 Odus that incarnate consciousness itself. So we're doing a cleaning of consciousness. So we want to invoke the energetic pattern that allows us to be conscious of self in the world. We want to put that in relationship to the Odu that's identified the problem. And then we want to clean the head. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'll go over a few of the simplest ones. The easiest one is to pray on the tray, close the Odu, anoint the head, put a little erosin on the tongue. Usually the books refer to pigeons. That's where the pigeons come in. You use the pigeons to clean the head. In traditional Yoruba culture, they eat pigeons. The condition of pigeons in the diaspora, I do not recommend eating pigeons. I don't think they're healthy, particularly, and it's a big risk. So what I do is I'll use a pigeon to clean the head, and then I'll let the pigeon go. There's also ways to clean the head using smoke, using cigar smoke. Some people in the diaspora use sage, various things. But what we're doing is we're addressing the idea that we're releasing memories that are locked in our DNA, and we're also releasing images of those experiences that become locked in our aura. We believe that ideas, thoughts, memories takes up space, and that they can become seated in the energetic patterns around our physical body. That's we'll have a class on that phenomenon one day. But for now, just know that we can attract negative ideas that influence us because they're taking up space in close proximity to our physical bodies. So head cleaning, that would be Ire-Ori, I-R-E, new word, O-R-E. And so we would do the, so if the oracle indicates the person needs a head cleaning, then what we do is we first make an offering to the ancestors, then we clean the head. All right. Now, if the...
so you're saying you would do it at Demu, and then you would, so that the both, so if it's the second step, you do 1 and 2, right? So
correct.
It's
always a cumulative, yes. Now, sometimes in some traditions, they'll eat the pigeon, so it becomes a blood offering. But the point of eating the pigeon is part of the payment for the to the diviner for doing the work. Africa is based on a barter system, more so in the olden days anyway, than it was money. So people have gotten the mistaken notion that we believe blood will fix a problem. That is absolutely not true at all, not even a little bit. You know, when people come to me and say, will you feed my pots? My answer is no, we don't do that. We don't just arbitrarily decide that we need to give blood to our pots. That makes no sense. Anybody that does that doesn't understand our faith. We offer animals to feed the people who do the work, so that when the Ire comes from Orisha, we call it, we'll mark the Orisha that's speaking the Odu. We'll mark the Odus for them. We'll mark the Odu that came in divination. We'll invoke the Orishas that are speaking, let's say, in the verse. And then what we'll do is we'll offer the bird, and then we'll break the wings off, and we'll clean the person with the wings. We'll place the wings on Eshu, and then we'll eat the carcass. So anytime you're using blood as part of an offering, it is part of the process of preparing food. In English, probably the best word for that is kosher food, or sanctified food, or elevated food. But the idea that blood that makes angry spirits happy is the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And the reason it's ridiculous is there's no basis for that idea in our scripture. That's just a common prejudice, I would call it, based on influences of other traditions that are in contradiction to what we believe. All right. So, what I'm going to do quickly for the people that are in the tradition and do the divining process, I'm going to share how you decide which Orisha is speaking which verse. So you take each leg of IFA and it works like this. Ogbe Obatala Oyeku Egun Iwari Agayu Odi Yamaya Irosun Shango Owanran Eshu Obara Shango Okanran Ochosi Ogunda Ogun Osa Oya Ika Iami Oturapan Nanabaruku Omolu Otura Obatala Irite Iami Oshe Oshun Ofun Obatala. So if you know that formula, you can take a look at the Odu and figure out which of the Orishas need to be fed. When we feed Orishas as part of the bow process, there are specific animals marked for specific offerings, but again, the point of the offering is to create food. Prayers are said on the food, and there's some value in eating the food. I'm not diminishing that, but the idea that blood fixes a problem is not consistent with the teachings of the prophet Rumia, which IFA is based upon. So, Obatala, snail, no red blood. Eshu will eat anything. Ochosi and Ogun, a rooster. Shango, rooster. Oya, a guinea hen. Oshun and Yemaya, hen. Falokun, a hen, and a duck, and Agayu, a rooster. I think I've included everything. So the offerings are
generally. The four-legged animal, is that mainly used when there's like something like a very big ceremony? So pretty much like if it's like a regular reading, if it's if a person needs some type of blood sacrifice done, a bow done, or not even sacrifice.
Listen, stop! I just said
we
never do blood sacrifices. That's not a part of our faith. We make offerings that involve blood, but the use of four-legged animals comes when it's Ire from Ifa. And what Ire from Ifa means is the person needs the prayers of at least a dozen elders. We believe that elders have the power of the word and the ability to collectively change reality. That's most specifically true when a person has a serious illness. Collective prayer, when you bring people together, you have to feed them. So if you have a dozen people you've asked to come and feed them, it makes sense to feed them a goat. Eating a goat is a big deal in traditional Yoruba culture. I've never seen anybody just eat a goat because they were hungry. It's always part of a ritual context. The meat is divided. It's a very serious business when they do that. And so when a goat is necessary, you do the offering to the ancestors, you clean the head, you make the bird offering to the Orisha that's speaking in the verse, and then you offer a goat to the Ikin of the Awo, who are there to pray on your behalf. And that's generally done with a goat. There's a style of divination where you take the goat's head and throw it in the air, and if it lands on its neck, the prayers are accepted. If it lands neck up, you have to continue praying until the correct place for the head shows up. And the other element is that when you're praying on behalf of when the Egbe is praying on behalf of a client, they're praying and reciting the verses from the Odu that came, that identified the problem. And then IFA also says that the solution to every problem is the opposite Odu, which again gets confused. I'm going to show what that means. Here's an Odu. It's called Ogunda Osa. The opposite of that is Okanran Obara. So when you're offering the goat, you would mark both Odus on the tray. The Egbe comes and recites the verses from each of the marks. The verses are extensive. Some of those Odus have 100 verses, and they'll recite them all. And they'll go into an altered state, and they'll hold the frequency that transforms the problem. It's really an amazingly elevating and unbelievable process. Literally, where you get 12, 13, 14, 15 all praying together for an offering related to E-Ray, IFA. They're literally changing physical reality as they speak. You rarely see that in the diaspora, but I'll tell you, the first time I saw that, it changed my perception of everything that we do and everything we can do. And, we've got non-IFA influences that make that level of transformation a challenge. And part of what I'm doing, part of my training, part of my teaching, part of my analysis of the language is to share the fact that you can't have that level of power unless you believe you have that level of power. This is really an issue of intention. IFA says creation is co-creation. So we can change the world around us. God gave us that ability. That ability is contingent on, number one, believing you have that ability, and number two, finding the way to work together. Bringing people together to pray on behalf of someone else is unfortunately and counterintuitively one of the hardest things there is to do in our faith. People have lots of good reasons why they can't pray for somebody. All those good reasons are total nonsense from the point of view of IFA, and it's part of the collective healing that needs to be done and able for us to be effective with the work that it is we are doing. So you offer a goat. The blood is put in a hikra, that's a calabash. You put a little salt in the bottom of the hikra. That keeps the blood from coagulating. If you don't put salt in the blood turns to jello real quickly, and then you can't use it. So once the blood is liquid and in the bowl, you take a bird feather and you dip it in the liquid blood, and you touch a drop of blood on each of the pots in the shrine. That represents the covenant between humans and God, thanking God for supplying us with food, not appeasing God for being angry at our behavior. Those are two different ritual conceptions and ideas, and I think it's important that if we're going to call what we do IFA, that we try and be consistent with the original intention and message of our faith. Yeah, is that clear? Do you have questions?
No. And yes. So there is because I heard something along the lines of, because sometimes there'll be something that you need to do as well, right? See, these things are things done, the head cleaning, the demu. Then there's also a bow that you might be told to do. And what I was told is that, if you don't do the ebo, then you become the ebo. What do you think about that?
I think that's total horse poop. And we need to stop scaring people into believing that because Spirit hates us, that we got to obey their commands, otherwise we'll be punished. The purpose of any offering is to expand our consciousness. We will either do that or we won't. But I guarantee you, no one has ever expanded their consciousness based on fear of spirit. That is not an effective methodology. The purpose of being on a woe, the purpose of doing a woe is to inspire people to expand their consciousness and to embrace unconditional love. And I can't do that if I'm running around scaring you, thinking, do this, do that. You got to be this. If you don't do this, this is the consequence. That's all Catholic catechism foolishness. Sorry. Catholic catechism, which I don't believe in. It may be the truth of the matter. I don't know. But it's not what I'm doing. And so any threat from an elder is inappropriate. Now, there might be consequences for not expanding your consciousness, but that's a personal choice, not based on the threat. You know, the idea, if you don't do this, you're going to die. I hear that all the time. That actually annoys me. If you don't do this, you're going to have bad fortune. You might be stuck. You might have some bad fortune, but you always have the option of changing your consciousness. You know, we need to put things in a healthy perspective in which we're not deifying dysfunction.
And I wanted to also, because, you know, say that, okay, you post, like a lot of times Babalawos are in this like 16-day, or Awos are in the 16-day cycle, right? So you get a reading, maybe they tell you to do a certain thing. You know, take this, get a watermelon, put it next to your bed, whatever it is, and then take that and bring it down to the river and put it and say a prayer, whatever they tell you to do. And if you don't do that, you know, within the 16 days, then is it irrelevant now to do that? Like, say if on the 17th day you finally get the money to get a watermelon.
IFA says, you know, what you just told me was something that somebody made up. Here's what IFA says. This is quoting scripture now, all right? IFA says, if you cannot afford to offer anything but dirt, offer it with heart and your prayer will be answered. So there's no reason to not be able to afford an offering. That's a silly notion. You give what you can when you can, and you do it with sincerity and with heart and with a true desire to improve the quality of your life and be a better person. That's the essential elements.
See, so interesting, right? So, you know, because a lot of times, you know, when you're getting a reading, the Babalawo will go, okay, should they offer this? Should they offer that? Should they offer this? You know, and even with the monetary aspect, they'll be like, hey, to do this particular ebo for you, whether it be the demu, because, you know, they'll say, okay, well, or maybe there's a thing where you need to take a certain spiritual bath to cleanse yourself, right? And then they'll say, okay, should it be, this is what I've experienced. A Babalawo will ask IFA, well, should this soap or whatever be $50, 25, 30, you know, or, you know, and go down, you know, according to IFA will say, yeah, this is the amount, you know, and say it stops at 10, and then that's supposed to be the amount of money that you're supposed to give for whatever the offering, whether it be for the, what is it called? They do a lot of stuff with the what is that stuff called? The plants that goes into the is a name for it. The
what?
Say it again.
A what?
Yeah, like say if you needed a specific plant thing to like soak in for 5 days, or you take this bath. They had this other stuff called Omiero, but I'm not sure if they have Omiero.
Yeah, listen,
called Omiero in IFA.
Listen, I try not to. Okay. Omiero
in Isheshe versus Lukumi, where there's a lot in Lukumi, you have the Omiero bath, right? And so I've been charged anywhere from 150 for Omiero to 200 for Omiero.
Yeah, Umiero is a misuse of a Yoruba word. The word Umiero means snail blood. It's not relevant to most offerings. And sometimes snail blood is added, but when you mix herbs, the Yoruba word is ewe. All right. So when people start throwing to see should this or that be done, it's because they haven't studied or don't know the traditional elements related to each verse. When you start making stuff up, I'm skeptical of how valuable it is. Also, the verses themselves generally indicate the cost in terms of the number of calorie shells, but most frequently it's done because the diviner truly believes that if my life gets better, your life gets better. I showed up in Ode Ramo. No one knew it was coming. 100 people took a week off and initiated me to elevate my consciousness. And those 100 people collectively charged me $125, which came to about 50 cents a person per day. And so it wasn't about the money. It's never about the money. It's about improving the quality of life within the community based on the idea if your life gets better, my life gets better. I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't charge for divination. People get upset with me for that. But that is a tradition within Africa. People leave offerings because they want to. They leave offerings because the work was effective, but they don't do it because I demand it and threaten them with gloom and dire consequences if they fail to pay me. That's a whole dynamic that's reflective of the way we do things in the White House these days, but it's not reflective of the traditional values of IFA at all, not even a little bit.
Thank you for clarifying.
That's my lineage. Now, other people disagree. I get a lot of heat for saying those things, but it's worked for me. I've got no confusion about it, and I certainly have a significant number of people who have followed those guidelines and report back to me that the quality of their life has improved, and they've used those same guidelines to help others in their community. Here's the part where we get confused. I don't know any Alwos in Africa that earn a living as Alwos. That's an American phenomenon. Every Alwo that I know in Ode Ramo either works a job or as a farmer. I've worked all my life. I don't earn a living as an Alwo. That's not consistent with our faith. The idea of being an Alwo is the idea of participating in a communal effort to sanctify the family. What does it mean to sanctify the family? It means to welcome babies at naming ceremonies. It means to perform puberty rites. It means to perform partnership relationships, to acknowledge elders when they become grandparents, and to engage in funerals. Those are all collective efforts where everybody in the community comes together and contributes what they know how to do and what they're sanctioned to do and what they're age appropriate to do to aid in the elevation, purification, and expansion of consciousness of the community itself. The idea that one person would make a living doing that at the expense of the family and use fear to demand that they get payment for that is not the basis of a spiritual discipline. That's the basis of what psychologists call a cult. I do not do cult work. I do priestly work. I elevate the consciousness of those who are part of my community, and I do not depend on anyone to support my priestly work in order for me to survive as a human being. I work most of my life in the legal profession, earn a living as a writer, and I do IFA as a act of unconditional love to elevate the community around me and to provide support for those that I care about and for those who are seeking sincere answers to sincere problems that will improve the quality of their life. If we can't figure that out, then I don't know what we're doing. But we've got things so backwards that people will not say anything when IFA is used to protect drug deals, but they'll be mad at me for saying that I don't charge for divination. That's how ass backwards we become. Here's a big news flash. Selling drugs does not sanctify the extended family. It does not elevate the family. It does not eliminate problems. It makes things worse. If we can't come to terms with that, then this is all just a charade drama, and who cares? So I really think that we have an obligation to study the wisdom of the ancestors, figure out what they try to tell us, take a look at how it functions in a communal setting, and to emulate that before we denigrate it. Does that make me sound like a grumpy old man? I
No, absolutely, yeah. So after the head cleaning, what are other forms of a bow? Like, did we kind of get into those? Like the bird, the four-legged animal. Was there any other form of a bow?
4 forms of a bow. One is called offering to the ancestors. One is called cleaning the head. One is called offering to the Orisha, and one is called offering to IFA. You have lots and lots of other bows, and I would say most of those are made up. There's no way I can describe them. Sometimes Spirit will come and give you a ritual process that can be effective, but they're not generally coded into the verse itself. The bows that are coded into the verse itself, I've just described. And the thing that's disappointed is there's so little study of that. People would prefer making stuff up. And why reinvent the wheel? You know, the ancestors preserved their recollection of what was effective and the reasons for it and the prayers that go along. So we're making up offerings, we're ignoring the prayers, we don't do any invocations, and then we're confused when life doesn't seem to get better. You know, I think it's time to take a deep breath, step back, look closely what it is the ancestors were trying to teach us, and move forward. I will say, I'll take it even to the next extreme, and that is the ancestors knew the problems that we would be facing right now here today in 2026 as a result of rampant stupidity and rampant denigration of children. And they've given us the tools to fix that, to address that, to transform that, to elevate that, and to make it go away, and to give us a stronger sense of who we are and how to be creative in the world so that we can share unconditional love with each other. And not only that, they're taking the verses they gave us 10,000 years ago, and they're finding people who they are clearly designating as mediums who are helping us illuminate the meaning of those verses. The information in terms of understanding the verses of Odu Ifa we're getting from Terrence Howard is astonishing. I've been studying this for 40 years, and Terrence in the last 2 years has changed my perception of almost everything, and I'm deeply grateful to him for that. But he's not the only person who's speaking with a prophetic voice. There are others. A lot of them are unknown people, within our community. You know, there's I've met a lot of our woes in Africa who can change physical reality with the power of their prayers. I've seen them do it. I've seen them do unbelievable things. The problem is, for us, is none of them speak English and none of them are on the internet. So it's going to take some effort to find those people and to learn from them and to start embracing the faith on its own terms instead of whatever it is seems to be running amok these days. I mean, that's critical, and you know, it's hard to say those things without wanting to bite my tongue. But people come to me every day with problems of dysfunction in their families, with horrible stories about the way priests have treated them. The sexual predatory behavior within our communities is beyond acceptable. Let's say that, beyond acceptable. You know, I'll give you an example. There is no verse that says the solution to a problem is to have sex with a diviner. Divination is a form in the United States of what's called pastoral counseling. Counseling from the clergy is regulated by laws. Having sex with a client in terms of pastoral counseling is a crime. Anybody who tells you that the solution to your problem is to have sex with them is committing a crime, and the appropriate response is to call the police, not think, "Oh my God, should I do this?" So we have what I would call room to grow in that arena.
Well, we talked about this. I did have Babo Kikipa and Iya of I forget the Iya on, and they talked about that there are some instances where, because we were talking about marriage, where a babalawo will tell a woman that she is to be a pet to be to them. What are your thoughts about that? Because
I
that
think that is shameful, inappropriate, and never true. We live in a free will country. A woman can decide she wants to be in a Puete, and then she'll go through what's called the courtship process. But to demand that based on some phony sense of divination is shameful, inappropriate, not true, and unproductive. Other than that, it's fine.
Well, that was shunned in the conversation because it was like people, but there's a lot of people. Even one of the young ladies that was actually on the show, Abundance Child, who talked about the fact that she was told that she was to marry a babalawo in Africa during her reading, and she ended up marrying him and stuff like that. So it gets kind of crazy, not just even having sex, but to be thinking to be forced, not forced, but like to be coerced.
Yeah, let me make it real simple. I've been studying Odu for 40 years. I've read all the books printed on the subject, probably, and I have never seen a verse that says that. So don't tell me that's not made up foolishness, because there's no precedent for it. We're either going to follow the wisdom of the ancestors as it's been preserved by your culture, or we're going to make stuff up. Now, I believe in freedom of religion. You can make stuff up, but have the courage to call it what it is. Don't call it IFA, call it stuff you made up. A relationship between a couple, man and woman, man and man, woman and woman, whatever it is, whatever the configuration, monogamous, polygamous, that's all issues of free will, all issues of agreement, all issues of maintaining good character. And once you get in a position of dominance or insistence or intimidation around those issues, you are no longer engaged in a spiritual path. You are engaged in a cult practice, and that never ends well for anybody.
Definitely. And then one other thing I wanted to clear up is to make sure that people are not like giving the wrong information. What do you think about, like, a lot of times what will babalawos reach out to a person online to read that, like, say?
Yeah, listen, that's taboo to offer an opinion without being asked. It's too silly to even go into. I can see all kinds of stuff that you should do or shouldn't do, and get divination in my terms of communication with spirit. But anytime somebody offers you an unsolicited opinion and they are not doing IFA, they are in violation of IFA taboo. They do not understand our faith. They do not understand their role in the community. And they are violating one of the fundamental principles of maintaining a healthy community.
All right, so if you guys are getting contacted on Facebook by these so-called
I would tell you how I would respond, but I have a taboo against using bad language. So when people contact me with that, my response, the gentlest response, is go tell that to someone who cares. I have elders that I go to who I trust. Those relationships are created by agreement. And you coming telling me that you're my elder when you don't even know me, I don't know you, and I have no interest in your opinion, is just unacceptable. And why people go along with it is puzzling to me.
Exactly. So, but I have been a part of Elay. Well, I wasn't a part of it when I first got into IFA. I was introduced to a babalawo that was in Africa, and he had to do a lot of stuff over the phone. Now, how is it as effective to do things like if you're doing it over the phone, or is it better to be face to face with that babalawo?
Yeah, two things. Effectiveness is a function of intention and good character. It's got nothing to do with proximity. So a person can do work for you from any place in the world if their heart is in the right place. The other thing is, by tradition from Africa, people that are truly students of IFA and who are good diviners would never call themselves a Babalawo. That's considered arrogant. In Yoruba culture, there's a belief there was one Babalawo and his name was Oromila. Awo means diviner. Babalawo means a master diviner. You just wouldn't call yourself that with a straight face. It's considered arrogant. I've been doing this for 40 years. I have never told anybody I was a Babalawo, nor would I. But I have been, I believe, effective in helping people clear up their confusion and expanding their consciousness. That's my job. I do that in a number of ways, sometimes with traditional abo, sometimes counseling on the phone, sometimes just listening to a person grieve. You know, this is not complicated. The first step in being an effective healer is empathy. If you can't empathize with the problem, I guarantee you'll never find a solution. And empathy is a quality of humanity, not a quality of being a Babalawo. We all need to be empathetic with each other. We all need to support each other. We all need to give each other the support that we need. We need to elevate each other's consciousness. We need to teach by role modeling good behavior. The rest of that, yeah.
I have one more question. Sorry.
Sure. That's right.
So I know we're past the hour mark, but there was some question I just have personally. I worked with an awo, who, he was doing readings for me. And, I had brought the Omera, but he wouldn't enter my house because he said that he saw all these spirits. He was a seer. He could see this energy in my house. And so he wouldn't even enter inside my house. But I would think as a Bob or awo, like, right, that you would have enough protection to be able to come into that house and be able to know exactly what to do to remove that situation. Or is that a function of a Babalawo, maybe, or an awo, or is that, or maybe that's like not there. It could be another priest.
Yeah, listen, if you're truly studying IFA, you're praying for the ability to go anywhere, anytime, with anyone for any reason and hold your integrity. Anything else is fear-based, and I don't do fear.
I just wanted to, for anyone that because there's certain things that happen in America. I'm not sure if they happen in Africa, but there's things that happen here that can be astronomically crazy. Like that, I'm like, okay, all right, interesting. So how could you clean my house if you don't even want to enter it? How could you do the things for me that need to be done?
Listen, but IFA is not a substitute for critical thinking. The answer to your question is you can't. And just because someone calls themselves a Babalawo doesn't mean we need to disregard our critical thinking and believe foolishness. That's the point of everything I've tried to say today.
Absolutely. So I know you got things to do. It's a Saturday. Normally, I'm sure that you're either relaxing or you're doing a lot of work. A lot of God children. Is there any final words you want to give to the audience, or just words?
Yes, listen, we're in such crisis as a country and as a planet that I really encourage people to go out of their way and engage in unmitigated, unsolicited acts of kindness. People are hurting. People are desperate. People are afraid and confused. And one simple, kind word can make all the difference. Offering people food can make a huge difference. Food has gotten so expensive. Mothers are going hungry to feed their children. Check on the mothers. Check on the single mothers. Check on people that are struggling to stay afloat. And do what you can to offer assistance. If we can't help each other, we're not going to make it. So it's time to really focus on our higher self, our better orishas, and stop with the foolishness. I don't know how else to say it. Because
the spooky dookie is what I call it. They call it.
Yeah, I do too. The ooey spooky, I call it. No more ooey spookies.
Yeah, I call it spooky dookie, spooky shit. You know what I'm saying? Spooky dookie. Okay.
I'm going to steal that spooky dookie. I like
right.
It.
Let's get rid of the spooky dookie. We don't
spooky
need
dookies are useless.
Right.
Totally useless. Spooky dookies don't work. They don't serve any purpose. And if you're trying to use spooky dookies to give to insist that I give you money, believe me, it ain't going to work. So let's look for some other way of getting through the day.
Can we, in the next one, like discuss different even ways to cleanse yourself? It's one thing because you can always get a reading and get like the ebo that you might need or the offering, but sometimes you just might need to cleanse yourself. Like, say if you feel like an energy, like say if you feel like sometimes it could be in their mind, but sometimes you'll think that someone's attacking you, but it could be your own mind attacking you, but you probably think it's an outside force. What I want to do a show on the things that a person could do before they even get divination to cleanse their own space, cleanse their own body, cleanse their own mind.
Yeah, all right. We can do that. There's some generic things done. Some stuff is cross culturally, and I'm initiated into my own culture. They do some of those things more so than maybe IFA. We can include some of that. But yeah, to me, the fundamental thing is to focus your intention on being safe. Nobody can, if you keep your focus on your destiny is God's will. People who are jealous and who are hexing you and doing various things, that's human will. In the battle between human will and God's will wins every time. So the only time you're infected by the negativity is when you give the negativity power. Now, there's ritual ways to deal with that. There's ritual ways to let go of that. There's ritual ways to really convince yourself that you're not affected by negativity. But I'm really a strong believer that you give anybody an inch in that arena, they're going to take a mile. And so, I'm probably the most hex person you've ever met. And do I look worried? Do I look like I spend any time worrying about it? The answer is I don't. So that's really at the foundation of anything that can be done. Now, there's other stuff. There's certainly baths that are effective. There's meditations that are very effective. There are Reiki that are effective. There's things that can be done. So, yeah, we'll do that next time, I promise. All right?
Definitely. Well, this has been a great show. We learned a lot today about IFA, and I appreciate your time. Every week, we learn more and more. I know that shouts out. You said there was a new baby born in your Elay.
Right. Yeah, it was a miracle. And not only that, we offered a bird to Iami. When you offer a bird to Iami, you have to take the life of that bird. So we took the life of a bird. We set it down. We prepared it for, let's say, we prepared it for the use it is required in Iami. And before we could do that, the bird resurrected and flew onto the shoulder of the Yawol and stayed on the Yawol's shoulder for the next 3 days.
For the next 3 days?
Yep. Rose from the dead and became attached to the Yawol. When she went to bed, the bird sat on her dining room table for the whole night.
Wow.
It's very strange. So
yeah.
There are things that happen as a consequence of intention, is my point. And we live in a far stranger universe than most people imagine. We can talk about this too a little bit. The Congress ordered the Pentagon to release its videos on UFOs. Mm-hmm. And the Pentagon refused because it said the ETs and the UFOs were demons and they didn't want to offend Christians. So we're going to talk about that too. I think that
I wanted to also, I have a woman. I tried to call you the other day because she was talking about how she encountered a vampire, and she was saying that the person touched her. She said that she was talking to this person for like what she thought was 5 minutes. And when she looked down at her watch, like an hour and a half had went by. And the person at the end says, it touched her arm and says, you have great energy. I love your energy. Thank you. But she said when she talked to him, it seemed like the person didn't have a soul when she looked into his eyes. And, it was just interesting. So, I want to really even start to get into some of those spiritual, like whenever you encounter certain people, because a lot of times, people don't even know what to do with those encounters. Like, you come into contact with a person that might be soulless.
Yeah, but that's not vampire. The word vampire in Hungarian means medium. It's a noble position. It's the Hungarian version of IFA. I get offended on the Hollywood version of vampire, which is not rooted in reality at all. So we can talk about that as well.
Yeah. So probably succubus was what that would probably be?
You can call it that. But again, not that hard to protect yourself from, in my opinion.
Interesting. So the next conversation we're going to get a little bit deeper into like some of the, because it's one thing to just talk about IFA, but there's a lot of things out that probably, IFA can explain, but there's things that like are going on that's like, okay, what is all this? So
some of it, we'll have that conversation. Some of it is foolishness, so you'll have to forgive me if I get annoyed, but we'll have the conversation.
Okay, yeah, let's cut out the foolishness from the reality.
There you go.
Mental. If a person might be having mental breakdown, who knows?
That is an element too. We can go into all that for sure.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Much love.
I appreciate you too. Stay safe. Know that you're loved and appreciated. We'll talk again.
All right, Odabo.
Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah, yeah, yeah. See if you believe in the God in you.